This is OFN NFL Preview on the Ourlads Football Network as the divisional round begins today. That's right, we are airing this show early in the morning, Saturday, and we still have games on Saturday and Sunday. We had 3 games on Saturday and Sunday last week. It was the first time ever for that in the new wild card era in the NFL. But we're back to the regular divisional round weekend where we have 2 games on Saturday, 2 games on Sunday. The first game kicks off at about 4:35 later today with the Rams at Lambeau Field taking on the Green Bay Packers. We're going to talk about that and, of course, break down the games, the trends, so much more. We'll start off by updating the latest on the coaching news because why not? We have our opinions on that as well. Bringing in, first of all, of course, my main analyst here all season long on OFN NFL Preview, Mark Lawrence at Playbook.com. Mark, your Cleveland Browns did it.
Yes, they did do it, Greg. A lot of smiles on the faces of people in Cleveland, and everybody's giddy right now, I would say that, and looking forward to this weekend's game. You know, whether they're going to be happy or not afterwards remains to be seen. We'll talk about that in a moment or two. But all in all, I would say Kevin Stefanski's done a wonderful job with the Cleveland Browns this year. He deserves to be in Coach of the Year talks. And right now, the Browns are playing with a lot of confidence. I'm sorry?
Hasn't he won that already?
I don't know if he's won the Coach of the Year. I don't know if they've officially awarded that yet or not.
I think I saw something about that.
Okay, well, if he has, deservedly so.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I mean, other coaches were deserving. You know, Brian Flores had a heck of a year as well.
Yep.
And Sean McDermott, who's also still alive, has had a heck of a year. But, you know, when you bring a team from the ashes to relevance and they're playing a football game this weekend this deep into the playoffs, you know, I think that's noteworthy. And, you know, I was also reading a little bit about Kevin Stefanski. I'll pass this note along to you about what he was like as he was obviously a football player at Pennsylvania, at Penn. He was a safety. But, you know, even in college in his dorm room, they said he was always the one guy in the room that was always on target, always the smartest guy in the room, and always the one that brought Animal House down to reality. And sort of what a coach does, I guess. And, you know, it's transformed that way for him in the National Football League. And I'm really thrilled all the success that he's met with this season.
That's where it begins, really. And should it be a surprise then that and he did it in 1 year. That's you know, It's not like it's his second year. He did it right away. And that's very, very difficult to do for a franchise that won their first playoff game since the 1994 season, which actually the game took place January 1st, 1995. But that's just, I mean, those were the days, huh? When the NFL was playing games on New Year's Day. What was that about? I can't even remember that kind of schedule. That used to be college football day.
Well, that was Pete Rozell's days, not Roger Goodell. And, you know, I guess, you know, New Year's Day, why not have a pro football playoff game? But now instead we watch regular season games, and they still draw a lot of traffic.
Okay, before we get into all of that, the big news this week, the coaching news. I know it doesn't have anything to do with picks and things of that nature, but it will once the offseason gets underway and you start looking at futures or you start your analysis of 2021. And, of course, the biggest news is Urban Meyer going to Jacksonville. Now, Ryan Dunleavy, who does the show with me every week on the OFN Today, even when I talked to him a couple of days ago in the news, seemed pretty certain that Urban Meyer was going to be the coach. Ryan just still couldn't believe it. And he was like, look, even if he becomes the head coach, I'm not going to believe that he's going to make it. So that's the trick, is it's a great hire for Jacksonville. It is the perfect hire, and you can understand why Urban Meyer took this job and considered this the perfect hire because of you're going to get Trevor Lawrence. You've got an owner who is going to stay out of the way. You know, you've got a location that he's familiar with in how he coached up the Florida Gators, and he's going to have complete control of the organization. This was the perfect situation. If Urban Meyer did not accept this job, he was never coming back to the NFL. The question's going to be, can he pace himself? Can he be self-aware enough to pace himself? Because if I'm Khan, I am making sure that I actually hire somebody specifically to make sure that Urban Meyer paces himself and keeps himself healthy.
Well, Greg, the greatest attribute of all football coaches is their ability to hire people around them that are smarter than they are and can help them effectuate a game plan. And that's exactly what he'll do. He'll end up with a coaching staff that will probably rival a lot of other coaching staffs in the National Football League because he knows more than anybody how important it is to have coaches, assistant coaches, coordinators that know what they're doing. I think that was what was lacking in Jacksonville in the past, and Urban Meyer's success speaks for itself here, obviously. Not many coaches in college football have a win percentage anything close to what Urban Meyer had. So the big question here becomes, can he make that step up to the National Football League? Arguably the greatest coach in college football, maybe Nick Saban, today at least, and we found out he couldn't make it in the National Football League. Will Urban Meyer be able to do something like that? I believe he will, and I believe it will be because the difference between him and Nick Saban is Nick Saban's ego is massive. Not so much for Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer put great coaching staffs together in his days of success at Bowling Green, Utah, Florida, Ohio State, and he'll do just the same thing with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, it should be interesting because you would think that, look, if they're really good coaches, then that means he either he's got to purge staffs somehow, or maybe there's a guy that his contract's running out. Oh, don't resign with them. Come over to me. Or he's got to find diamonds in the gems. He's got to find guys that they don't know, but I know that this is an up and comer because it's a lot harder to build and to find really good qualified assistant coaches in the NFL as opposed to college. That's going to be a big order for Urban Meyer, and that's maybe part of the reason why it's harder to win in the NFL than it is in college. And he's not going to win early on. It's not going to happen. He's never had He's never had a losing season, right? In college football.
No, never.
He's going to have one. No, look, if he doesn't have a winning, if he can find a way to get to 500 in 2021, then he's coach of the year. So I don't think that's going to happen. And that's also going to be important when he does start to lose. Does he feel like he's got to work harder? And if he feels he has to work harder, is that going to be, again, something that's going to be an issue for his health?
Well, again, if he has to work harder, he'll work smarter is what he'll do. And, he'll pay his assistants a lot of money.
Yes.
In fact, he'll probably be record-setting payrolls for these assistants that he's going to be bringing on, much like Nick Saban does at Alabama.
Yep.
Those assistant coaches, they're not starving, okay? They're making more than most head coaches do. And we're going to see much the same here with Urban Meyer. Very, very astute, smart head coach. He waited for the right situation, the right opportunity. I believe it's here in Jacksonville. It was a great hire by this football program here, and I'm looking forward to next year to see exactly if they can challenge in that AFC South.
And the Jets hitting a home run with their hire, Robert Saleh. If you look at some of the candidates that I was hoping the Jets were going to go after, the two guys that were at the top of my list were in college, but those guys aren't even being interviewed. I mean, I first of all, I didn't think they were Campbell and Fitzgerald. I didn't think they were, but then I started hearing, whoa, maybe Matt Campbell wants to interview, and maybe there is going to be a change for Fitzgerald. And then, okay, if that's the case, well, I want to interview those guys, but that hasn't happened. Apparently, those guys don't want to leave, so that moved Saleh back to the top of the list as far as assistant coaches with no head coaching experience. He was clearly the guy. I preferred him 10 times over Arthur Smith. I don't trust Arthur Smith as much as Saleh. Saleh has a little bit longer of a resume. Smith, interesting, is one of those guys where I think you have to interview him. And I've never interviewed him, so I don't know what kind of guy he is, but he's kind of a Johnny-come-lately, instant kind of, how he's accelerated to being a head coach. I'd be a little bit concerned with that. I don't know. I mean, hopefully Arthur Smith is the right guy for Atlanta, but I'd be a little bit worried about that. But I'm not worried about Robert Saleh.
Well, if Arthur Smith brings Derrick Henry along with him.
Exactly, right?
That's another case,
yes.
Okay? But it's not going to happen.
No.
And, I agree with you. He was hired largely because of the recent success of the Tennessee Titans. And, NFL football teams love to mimic success. And what they'll do is they'll knee-jerk at anything that worked for that reason of that success. And that's what they're doing in a hire much like this. I'm with you. If I'm an Atlanta Falcons fan, I'm a little bit disappointed here. Not that Arthur Smith could end up being a
He
terrific
could
head
be,
coach because
yes.
we don't know anything, about him and what he does, in truth, his tendencies and so forth
Mm-hmm.
and whatnot. But he's not the prettiest looking hire, that's for sure, at least in name only,
Yeah.
uh,
It's not a
in
sexy
that
hire.
regard. No, not at all. No, not at all. In fact, we haven't even talked about Eric Bieniemy yet,
I know.
and he's been dissed and passed over continuously. And a lot of the minority coaches are insisting that he gets a call, and he will probably end up being a head coach somewhere here real soon, if not this year. But the big rap on him is he doesn't call plays. He's not his own play caller, and he's going to end up having to rely then on somebody to take control, to take those
Yep.
reins. And when you hire a new coach like that, who's never been a head coach uh, at a level like this, there's some trepidation. So I can understand why Eric Bieniemy is still an assistant
Yeah, I
coach.
think that a few things. First of all, what's going on with Nagy in Chicago? Well, Nagy was a better version of Bieniemy, and there's a little
Yes,
bit of, well, I don't know if Nagy's really. I mean, look at their offense. Look at Trubisky. He's supposed to be an offensive genius. Well, Trubisky's been a disaster so far. He's been a bust, and that's supposed to be Nagy's specialty. Yes, he's made a couple postseasons, but they flamed out pretty quickly. And then you also take a, like you said, the fact that Andy Reid's the one really controlling everything there. But I also think what's important is two other things. He obviously, and I've heard this before, he obviously does not interview well. And then his baggage. He has baggage. He just does. I know he's been a model citizen for whatever, 10, 15 years, but he's got baggage. He's got baggage where he's got, he's had what, DUI baggage. He's had some anger issues, things like that. In this day and age, I just, combined with maybe he's not a good interview. He's not the main play caller. Look what's going on with Nagy. I just think he's a risky hire. That's what I think he is. And I just think that there are better candidates out there right now. He's been interviewed a ton, so it's not like he's not getting a chance.
it's a good point you make. Why hasn't he been hired? And he does have the baggage, and I think it also parallels to the Texas Longhorns hire of Steve Sarkisian, who has
Yeah.
baggage. Okay, that was a knee-jerk hire just based upon Alabama's
That
success.
that that that
Okay,
that hire is just. If I'm a Texas fan, I am so upset because yes, the guy can recruit. There's no
absolutely.
question about it. He recruited the hell out of Washington, but he couldn't win. Couldn't win games. He's not. You can't win. He's sort of like that's what they. Isn't that the reason they got rid of Herman? Because he couldn't win big
Yes, it is.
games.
Yep, exactly. He won, but he just didn't win the
Yeah.
big games. And I think it's a trade backwards or a move backwards for the Texas Longhorns here. And that baggage that Sarkisian had, whether or not it'll resurface again remains to be seen. But again, I'm like you. I wasn't thrilled at all with that hire, and I don't think too many people in Austin were as well.
All right, so let's get to it. Let's talk NFL playoffs, the divisional round. And it begins, like I mentioned, at the Open in a few hours, starting with the LA Rams and the Green Bay Packers. And the Packers are right now a 6.5-point favorite, or at least that's the latest odds I have. And it's interesting. This is the first matchup of LaFleur against McVay, and those guys are kind of tied to the hip with Shanahan, and now you've got Mike LaFleur, who's going to be the coordinator for the Jets. So that's a little family they got going on there. But McVay, who has had no success against Shanahan, will go up against LaFleur for the first time. So we'll see how that works out. McVay has done a really good job as a road coach and a coach. It's interesting that I know he's been around for 3 years or more than 3 years, but it's interesting that when I looked at the trend that says that he's covered all 5 of his games when he has been a road dog of 3 or more points, I was like, well, that can't be right. He's only been a road dog of 3 or more points 5 times. I mean, that's weird. And then as usual, I always double check things that I find very weird. And wow, I guess that's right. I mean, he's only been a road dog of 3 or more points 5 times. So he's covered all 5. That's a good sign for the Rams, but they just have so much. I mean, with Goff's injury, he shouldn't have even played last week. I don't even know if he should be playing this week. Donald's not even 100%. He's still a beast. There's no question about it. Kupp is not 100%. So it's all about Akers. And the Packers rush defense that killed them in the playoffs last year. And they've done a much better job this season. And if they can shut down Akers, I just don't see the Packers having too much of an issue with this one. I'm taking the Packers. I'm giving the points. I just don't think this is going to be one of those really exciting Aaron Rodgers games, though. I think it'll be more like it'll be a struggle, but as long as Aaron Rodgers doesn't play as poorly as Russell Wilson did, which I don't think he will, because Rodgers is playing at an elite level right now, and Russell Wilson wasn't. I see the Packers winning kind of like an ugly, like 20-7 game, something like that.
Well, I think the mismatch in this football game is indeed Aaron Rodgers against Jared Goff. And if you're going to make a case for the LA Rams, you have to take the baggage that comes with it, and that's Jared Goff. The Rams don't win football games because of Goff. They win football games in spite of Goff. So now you have to go into Lambeau Field with a warm weather team into a frigid site to get the job done against a quarterback that's having arguably his best year in his career in Aaron Rodgers this football season here. What else works in this football game is the fact we called out in our newsletter this week is that number one seeds out of the NFC have done tremendously well. They are 26-4 straight up in this divisional round the last 30 years. That's a pretty strong number. And more importantly, as you go back to 1975, you'll find number one seeds from the NFC having won 16 Super Bowls, whereas number one seeds from the AFC have only won 9 times. So this number one seed that is bred and born out of the NFC is real, it's legitimate, and the Green Bay Packers are just that this year. They rank in the top 10, both offensively and defensively. And if there's any quarterback in the league that can counter the LA Rams' top-ranked defense, which is tough as nails, it would be Aaron Rodgers. I'm a great fan of Sean McVay. As you mentioned here, biggest part of his success has been on the road, and he brings a great defense along with him. But you've got a football team here in Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers that I think are the team to beat out of the NFC. At home at Lambeau, there's no reason I'm going to make a case for the Rams. I'm with you. I'm on the Green Bay Packers in this game.
Yeah, it's the other thing. You got a California team. They have to play in really cold conditions in Lambeau. And a couple of key injuries this weekend, and this is one of them. And that's the fact that Bakhtiari, who suffered the ACL injury in practice a couple of weeks ago, he's not going to be able to play. And right tackle Ricky Wagner is dealing with some knee issues. He's been limited in practice, but apparently Wagner will still apparently stay at tackle, and that's key because if they don't have Wagner, then there's some issues. But apparently Wagner is going to be okay from what we know. They're just going to slide Billy Turner from guard to tackle. Now this is important because if you look at it and you go, well, wait a second, their best left tackle's out. It's the Ram defense. This is perfect for the Rams. Well, keep this in mind that Bakhtiari has missed 4 games this season for whatever reasons. 4 games. Aaron Rodgers has a 15-0 touchdown to interception ratio in those games, and he's only been sacked 3 times. Now, I know that's not the Ram defense, but it just shows you don't get carried away because Bakhtiari's out. That should mean, oh, I got to take the Rams now. No, if you like the Rams, you like the Rams, but don't like them because Bakhtiari's out. That should not be a key issue. It is good for the Rams that they got Whitworth back last week, so that was a miracle that he was able to return as early as he was able to. Keep this in mind, too, with the Packers' defense. They've held 4 of their last 5 opponents to 16 points or less. And after David Montgomery ran 57 yards on his first carry back in Week 12, they have allowed just 455 rushing yards over their last 6 games. So that has to be key here. You zero in on Akers. You force Goff to beat you in the passing game. And by the way, that's kind of what happened in Seattle. Goff had that one play where he chucked the ball up and Jamal Adams couldn't get the trajectory. I don't know what the deal was, but he was just completely caught off balance. And it was a big play for the Rams, and that led to a touchdown. And they had a pick 6, and they had another play where Goff tossed the ball, I think it was to Akers, and he was able to go like 30 yards and get them in position for another score. So it wasn't like the Rams moved the ball up and down the field last week. They had a couple of freak plays. That's how they moved, and the pick 6 on defense. And I think if the Rams are going to do it again this week, they're going to have to kind of repeat in the same scenario because they're not going to march up and down the field.
I don't believe so. This is a Green Bay Packer football team that gets not a lot of credit for their defense, which is really, really good. One last closing note from me as far as the Green Bay Packers are concerned, and this is really a great stat for my database, is that NFL football teams that lost in their championship game the previous season and make it back to the playoffs the next year have been absolutely outstanding at home in divisional round games. They all played with a week of rest. Those teams are 43-7 straight up in these games, including 21-3 against the spread when they take on an opponent that's off a double-digit win. This all fits to the Green Bay Packers, who are mad as hell about being one game away from making it to the Super Bowl last year, and they're not about to trip up at home here at Lambeau this year in the turnaround season.
All right, let's go to the action tonight. Baltimore and Buffalo. Buffalo's a 2.5-point favorite in this one, and both teams are coming into this game equally hot. The Ravens have won 6 straight. They've covered 7 straight. The Bills have they're 8-1 straight up and against the spread in their last 9 games. Matter of fact, the Bills haven't lost since the Hail Mary. And you're looking at 2 teams that whoever wins this game will be able, like when we talk about the championship game next week, we're going to talk about how, if it's the Bills, we're going to talk about how they still haven't lost since the Hail Mary. If it's the Ravens, we're going to talk about how their season kind of took off when Lamar Jackson came on the field against Cleveland to throw that miraculous touchdown, and they haven't lost since that game either. So one of these teams will have a little bit of that going for them. Look, I think, to me, I understand why people would pick Baltimore because I still think Baltimore, matter of fact, in my futures reports, I started to put some money on Baltimore a few weeks ago because I could tell, all right, they're starting to win. I still don't believe completely that they're the best team or in Lamar Jackson, but they've got enough talent that in a COVID type season, anything can happen. So yeah, and they were like 20-1 at the time. So I definitely understand why people would back Baltimore in this one. I just think Baltimore is getting completely disrespected with this line. They're a 2.5-point favorite. I know the fan situation doesn't matter, but still, 2.5 at home means that Baltimore would be favored by 3.5 in Baltimore, and also trying to tell me that Baltimore is a better team. That Buffalo's a 2. Come on, I mean, or even no, Buffalo's a better team than Baltimore. So look, the big thing in this game is going to be about Buffalo's defense. Because Baltimore's defense has been clearly better than Buffalo's defense. But Josh Allen is clearly better than Lamar Jackson. He's a better version of Lamar Jackson. You want to talk about Lamar Jackson running all over the place? Josh Allen can run all over the place too. What's the difference? Josh Allen throws all over the place. Lamar Jackson doesn't. So the big deal in this game is going to be it's Buffalo's defense and Baltimore's defense. And that is going to be the key. But when I go into a playoff situation where you got a really close matchup, I'm just going with the better quarterback, and I'm still going to take the Bills and Josh Allen.
Not giving Lamar Jackson any due at all.
What do you mean, for running all over the place against Tennessee? No, I mean, come on. Sooner or later, you got to start throwing the football.
Well, you do. There's no question about that. But, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The Baltimore Ravens happen to be the number 1 team in the National Football League in rush attempts per game. That's a critically important stat for NFL football teams, especially in the playoffs. Now, granted, Lamar Jackson, they don't rush the ball that many more times per attempt by design. They do it out of necessity with Lamar Jackson on a broken play, running and scrambling. But the bottom line here is this is a football team that, if you take a look, in their last 6 football games, they've averaged 267 rushing yards a game. The last time a team did that was 1949, the Philadelphia Eagles. Very, very tough to contain a team like this. Other side of the coin, the Buffalo Bills. Yes, they've had a monster season. And we acknowledge Sean McDermott and the great job that he's done. Josh Allen's come into his own this football season. They check all the boxes. The one box they don't check this week is what I call this is what I look for in handicapping, my chink in the armor. And the chink in the armor for the Buffalo Bills this week happens to be this. You take a look at what they did coming down the stretch here. They had won and covered and out-yarded every opponent successfully 7 games in a row. What did they do last week? They win, but they don't cover the spread, the chink in the armor. Suddenly, everything that was clicking and hitting on all cylinders wasn't there last week. And I can tell you how many times this happens to football teams in the NFL, that when that chink in the armor finally happens, whether they lose the game to the spread or whether they didn't outyard their opponent, the next game, if they find themselves favored, they oftentimes don't even win the game, let alone cover the spread. So I've got a combination factor here of this team in Baltimore with this number one rush attempts, rushing offense is very, very powerful, taking on this Buffalo Bills football team, who I happen to feel will be playing with all the pressure as opposed to Baltimore in this game. Baltimore's on a free roll right now. They're on a monster run. They've won and covered 6 straight football games in a row. The other side of the coin that clinches this for me is John Harbaugh. We talked about how good Sean McVay is on the road. John Harbaugh is even better. His football teams are terrific on the road in the playoffs. They've covered the spread 13 out of 17 games. And in fact, they're 9-0 the spread in those games when they didn't beat the spread by 17 or more their previous game. I think Baltimore's a live dog. You're looking for live dogs that you think can win games straight up? I make the case for the Baltimore Ravens.
Interesting here that you look at the fact that Josh Allen, his first ever start, came against Baltimore, and he did not play well. That's not a big surprise, first start going up against Baltimore's defense. But he didn't play all particularly well in his second matchup as well. So he's 0-2 against Baltimore, and his completion percentage, actually, if you look at it, 23 of 54, 220, a touchdown, no interceptions, a fumble, and been sacked 9 times. Now, that's the difference with Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson played against Buffalo in that first matchup, but what didn't start, that was still Flacco. But then he started the second time. Doesn't have great stats, though. 17 of 29, 169, 3 touchdowns, a pick. Only been sacked twice. Again, that's a big difference there. But he's rushed 18 times for 79 yards without a rushing touchdown. So the Bills in that one matchup did a good job. Didn't allow Lamar Jackson to run all over the place. Sean McDermott, defensive coach. So that's going to be a key, as I mentioned. Look, Tennessee doesn't have a good defense. And for most of the first half, until that touchdown run late in the first half, they had pretty much held Baltimore in check. So I think Buffalo could do a better job than that if Tennessee can. And Lamar Jackson is in his 4th playoff game, first time as a playoff dog. He is still, if you look at it, his record statistically, he's got 6 turnovers and 4 touchdowns. It's still not very good, but he was able to make some big plays, really one major play on the ground at the end of that first half. I just need to see more from Lamar Jackson. If he's good. Look, I don't think they can play the game they played last week and beat Buffalo this week. They have got to, Lamar Jackson's got to play better. If he plays better, I'm not saying he can't. If he plays better, throws the ball a little bit more consistently, yeah, they can definitely win this game, because we both agree this is a really even game. I mean, either team can win this game. It wouldn't be a surprise, but I just need to see a little bit more from Lamar Jackson in the passing department if he's going to step up in competition and beat the Bills this week.
Well, I get that completely. He's not the prettiest looking passer. There's no question about that. That's the reason he was drafted as the final pick in the first round of the draft when he was selected, which was an absolute steal. Going into the draft, people were looking at him as a possible first 10 pick within the first 10 picks of the draft, but it didn't happen, and Baltimore ended up, to their credit, taking advantage of the situation. But you mentioned about Lamar Jackson turning the football over here. Go look at this football team, Greg, in their last 11 football games. They're averaging only 1 turnover a game. They're doing a real nice job here, especially coming down the stretch here, of protecting the football. So it's not like Lamar Jackson dropping back into the pocket and getting picked off time after time after time. No, at all. I mean, I realize he had a bad game when they turned the ball over 4 times. You got to go back to November 1st in that game when they turned over 4 times. But they're going to do a decent job protecting the football here. And if they don't turn the ball over, again, I'm going to reiterate and say, when you're looking for a live dog that can win a game straight up, I think Baltimore checks the boxes.
All right, let's now turn our attention to Sunday. The first game is Cleveland and Kansas City, and Stefanski returns, so that's good. Not that they needed him on the field last week, but the big deal about this game for me is definitely a couple things. First is the point spread. I just think it's ridiculous. I know why it's 10. I get it. But I just think I'm not seeing it. I'm just not. Maybe if the Chiefs score a second a touchdown late in the game and they cover 2.5 minutes to go, okay. I just don't see them winning this game where they've got a 16-point lead with 3 or 4 minutes to go. I just not the way the Chiefs are playing late in the season, and not where Cleveland is coming from. You just talked about Baltimore and how they feel about themselves, playing with house money. Well, Cleveland's playing with even more house money. I mean, the first playoff win, we talked about that since 95, and their confidence levels through the roof. And they're a 10-point dog, and the Chiefs are not. Now, look, maybe Patrick Mahomes was bored. Maybe it's possible that he was so bored late in the season that he just didn't play his best football, because he did not. If you take a look at the last 4 or 5 games, he just wasn't playing well. Matter of fact, his last 2 games, his completion percentage was 54%. In his last 3 games, his touchdown to interception ratio was 7-4, and you combine that with the first 12 games, it was 31-2. And then also in his last 3 games, he's been sacked 7 times. He's fumbled the ball 3 times, lost it once. He had that 30-yard sack against the Dolphins, which was crazy, compared to just 15 sacks and 2 fumbles with 1 lost in the first 12 games. And all we have to do is take a look at the spread line over the last half of the season, and that's all the proof we need. They're 0-7-1 against the spread in the last 8 games. So I just don't see it. I think Cleveland, I'm not sure Cleveland could win this game, but I actually think they're going to have a great chance to do it. And of all the teams this weekend, they're going to be the team that I'm going to put money on to win at 4-1 on the money line.
Well, they're coming in loose as a goose. There's no question about that. Feeling awfully confident about themselves. And also, you got a quarterback here in Baker Mayfield that's playing his best football of his career. 14 touchdowns, only 1 pick coming in this football game here of late. Really, really good protecting the football here. Now this week, they're going to have their best, not their best, but an all-Pro Bowl lineman back here, and Joe Bitonio, he's back. Denzel Ward, their best defensive back, is back for this football game. A couple other players that are back off the COVID list, and not to mention Kevin Stefanski, as you said. The head coach will be back on the sidelines for this game. A lot to like about what Cleveland Browns will look like this week, as opposed to what they took the field looking like against Pittsburgh, and got the job done. Now you're talking about a team that all of a sudden beats Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh, and they're taking double digits from a team in Kansas City that has, as you said, not beat the spread the entire second half of the season. November 1st was the last time this Kansas City football team beat the spread in a football game. And you go back and you look at them, look at how they started the season here. In their first 9 football games, they were out-yarded 5 times. They are not playing good football this season here. Now, whether it's complacency from a defending Super Bowl champion, that could well be, but you don't just automatically step on the accelerator and say, okay, it's playoff time and here we go, after having not done that all football season long here. It's called handicapping. And when you're handicapping these 2 football teams, one team is playing their best football of the season, and we haven't seen Kansas City even come close to doing just that this year. A lot of value here to the Cleveland Browns in this football game. Will they win the contest? Maybe, maybe not. I'll say this, I played them on the money line last week against Pittsburgh, and was a little bit uneasy in the second half there when things began to get away a little bit, but they still managed to win the football game in a convincing fashion. I still think they're going to be in this game right down to the wire here, and I'm going to go so far as to say that the team scores last wins this football game.
Yeah, what Cleveland probably shouldn't do, especially after what happened last year in this round with Houston, and the way Cleveland has squandered their big leads this season a couple of times, don't get off to a big lead. That probably wouldn't work out. So kind of, maybe just hang around with Kansas City for the first 3 quarters, and you could turn it on in the 4th quarter. But
well, that's if you're looking the back door cover, okay?
Well, that's true too. Yeah, you want all the points you can get. But even Houston last year, remember, what did they have? Like a 3-score lead and all the points they were getting, and they still didn't cover. So
in the first quarter, right? They had that big lead.
Imagine you probably felt, oh, I've got this. I mean, I've got I'm up 27 points or whatever it was, 28 points, and they still wind up not covering. So. All right, Tampa Bay and New Orleans wraps it up. Breeze, Brady, of course, that's the storyline. We all get that. Tampa Bay kind of did what they've been doing at the end of the season with Washington last week, another losing team. That, okay, they won, but it wasn't like it was a pretty win. It was a win. They didn't cover, and they really shouldn't have covered. It was close, but their last 5 wins, again, against losing teams, they are winning. Their offense is definitely peaking. There's no question about that. That's what they have going for them. Unlike the Bakhtiari injury, I think the Kappa injury is a lot bigger for the Bucks, because Kappa's had a nice season for the Bucks, even though he's a guard. He's started every game. He's out. Aaron Stinney will make his first NFL start, and he's a guard. And I think that's more important than a tackle for Brady, because that means interior rush. That's how you get Tom Brady. That's how you get him out of his, because of course, Brady wants to be able to, timing and everything. I think that's going to be a big issue. That's the thing that scares me the most about taking Tampa Bay. Now, I'm going to take Tampa Bay, but I'm going to take them by just the slightest bit. I'm not really high on either one of these teams to win a championship. I think New Orleans showed once again last week that there's some warts that I'm just not liking about the Saints. I mean, they're lucky that they played the Bears last week. I mean, the Bears, mistake after mistake after mistake, and they were still in the football game. Now, maybe it was a matchup thing. Maybe it was. And maybe the Saints don't have to deal with that with the Bucks this week. Bucks defense isn't like the Bears defense. And I also have to be concerned with the fact that the Saints have swept the Bucks and they destroyed them in their last matchup. That does concern me. But I just think it is going to be kind of hard to beat Tom Brady for a third time. Nobody's ever swept them in 2 games. Now you're going to be asked to do it 3 times. I am leaning towards Tampa Bay by the smallest bit. I just hope it's a good game. That's all. I think it would be great for football if these 2 legendary quarterbacks can try and shine in the fourth quarter. That would be nice.
Well, this will be the most watched football playoff game of the weekend here. Obviously, the 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks going at it toe to toe.
Maybe the season, yeah.
Maybe the season, and also because it's the late game, so they'll get all the ratings they want in this football game, and good for them. I'm looking forward to watching the game myself as well. I'm going to be on the Tampa Bay Bucs side of this football game, not so much because of the Tom Brady factor. Yes, there's a lot of things to like about that, having not lost ever 3 times in a row to the same team, him being outstanding in his career in games as an underdog, him being outstanding in his career with division revenge. And in fact, in 14 times in his career when he's had division revenge against opponents that had a better than 300 record, he's 13-1 straight up and against the spread. Brady brings all the numbers in this contest here, unquestionably. But the reason I'm going to this football contest here is because of Bruce Arians, their head coach. I don't like having to beat Sean Payton, who I think is a masterful coach, and he gets the best out of his football team every opportunity he can. Mm-hmm. But Bruce Arians was embarrassed with his worst loss ever in that aforementioned game at home against New Orleans later on in the football season here. Now, he comes into this contest here away. Bruce Arians does when he's on the road against winning football teams, or division teams, I should say, when he's away. He's 16-7 straight up and against the spread. He knows how to win games away from home against division foes that he knows. And you've got the Drew Brees factor in this football game that everybody wants to just pass over, just given the fact that it's New Orleans. But Drew Brees does not play well in the postseason. Nope. He's been at 17 games. He's only won 9 of them. He's only beat the spread 6 times. And he's never covered the spread in the postseason against an opponent that comes off back-to-back wins. 5 times he's tried, 5 times he's failed and lost the money all 5 times.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, matter of fact, he's 3-9 against the spread as a playoff favorite. That's even worse.
That's even worse, right. So it all goes into how well Drew Brees has not performed in the postseason here. You've got an angry dog here in Tampa Bay with a quarterback that is capable of extracting some revenge, a head coach that's really has this big chip on his shoulder because of all that. I'm on Tampa plus the points in this football game.
All right, also, get this. Drew Brees has never – there's only been 1 playoff season that Drew Brees has won multiple playoff games. That was the Super Bowl 2009 season. That's it. It's the only time Drew Brees has ever won multiple playoff games in a single season. So.
So let me ask you this then. That being the case, if he wins this football game, do you put him in the Super Bowl?
No, because I still like the
No,
Packers. So
I
yeah,
understand.
and again, unless Breeze and New Orleans shows me something, like if they blow out Tampa Bay again, like they did earlier this season, and wow, okay, then I might think, well, but after what I saw against Chicago, I still feel even better about the Packers. I don't care if Tampa Bay wins. I still feel good about Green Bay getting to the Super Bowl and actually winning the Super Bowl this year. So
Cool.
yeah,
Good
and
news.
that was your pick too?
Yes.
We both picked the Packers.
Yes, we
Okay.
did.
Yeah, I know that Ryan went with the Saints. I think his Saints are his pick again, but he's taken the Saints like 4 straight years. So he's hoping that one of these years he'll get it right. Devin White returns
He,
too
he,
for the Bucks. That's a big deal.
he loves Cajun food, by the way. I
What's
understand.
that?
Brian loves Cajun food. Okay.
Okay. All right. And that'll wrap it up. So playbook.com, the basketball season is underway. I still can't get around getting into college basketball, though, I must admit. Not having fans. NBA, a little bit different, even though the NBA, I mean, I'm a Nets fan, and I'm not overly happy about what happened this week. I mean, I'm kind of disgusted about what's going on, and it's weird. I mean, maybe I'm getting too old. Maybe if I was 22 years old, 23 instead of 53, I'd be loving this, but it's just, I don't know what to feel. And then throw in, I just can't get into this. No fans, especially college basketball. I'm telling you, if they don't allow fans into the college by the time we get to March and April, which they're probably not. If they don't allow fans to watch college basketball games in person, nobody's going to watch. The ratings are going to be as bad as the ratings have been and worse with every sport. And people are making excuses. Oh, there's too many serious things going on. Oh, the college football championship game didn't have great ratings because there were 6 games over the weekend. And there was a DC conflict. No. People are not watching sports anymore because they can't watch it. It's unwatchable. I said this last year before all this started. Fans are not going to accept watching sporting events with no fans. You can't get into it. And especially college basketball. You need fans for college basketball. It's what makes college basketball. You take fans out of the arena in college basketball games, you have nothing. Nobody. That doesn't mean you don't wager on it. Your team's in it. You root for your team. But the ratings, the general public getting behind these sports without fans, that's the number one reason the ratings are down all across the board, because fans are not allowed at these sporting events.
Well, it's non-relatable is what it is. And as you mentioned here, they're not going to relate to the sport if they can't attend the sport. It's just that simple. College basketball has no fans in the stands. The NBA has their own problems. They don't have players to play the game, to even dress
up.
That's true too. So the situation's worsening with each passing day in both sports. And I only hope, like you, that I know that they're going bubble-like in their theory for the NCAA March Madness and holding all the games in and around Indianapolis, but they're going to have to let fans in the stands in those games. They're going to absolutely have to do just like as you mentioned here, if they want a rabid following. So it's a decision for them to make, and we'll see exactly how that all fares
Either
out.
way, though, basketball is definitely going to start being the full-time gig for you guys at Playbook in the next few weeks. And you've already been sending out your newsletters over the last couple of weeks, especially since 2021 began.
Yeah, we're full-time into the basketball newsletter right now. We've got our weekly midweek alert newsletter where we cover all the NFL playoff games. And just one quick note here, Greg, that playbook.com is now playbooksports.com.
Officially. Okay.
Officially playbooksports.com. So if you go to playbook.com, it's going to take you over there for a while. Okay. But bookmark it, get there, and make sure it's Playbook Sports that you go to if you're looking for sports information.
All right, I'm marking that down right now. All right, excellent. Mark, appreciate it. We'll talk about the championship round next week right here on OFN NFL Preview.
Hey, I look forward to it, Greg. Enjoy the games, be well, and stay safe.